Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Uri, for inviting me to your great
Yes,
podcast. Happy to be here.
thank you. Yes, thank you very much. So let's start with high tech and you being a venture capital investor. Um, Tell us, who do you work with? What kind of technologies? Israel is world famous for the advanced technologies it's exporting into the world. Everyone knows Waze and similar unicorn startups. Tell us about your experience.
So I've been doing this kind of venture capital or startup investments for about 20 years now. Um, when I started, it was mostly into pre-seed and seed stage, early stage startups, personal checks of 50,000 or 100,000 dollars to start with. It was a big deal back then. Now these days it's not that much, but um, the number of VCs that are present in Israel has grown substantially in the last decade, and I think we're at least 100, if not 200 VCs that are operating. I guess that the most popular vertical these days, in which the biggest exits are generated, is the cybersecurity vertical. Personally speaking, I've invested a lot into B2C and B2B software along the years. I have a background in ad tech and advertising and e-commerce, so some of the investments that were successful were in that space. These days, I stopped almost entirely to do angel checks, and I invest more through more established vehicles, such as being an LP in VCs.
Okay, so let's backtrack for a second for people who don't understand the startup scene in Israel, because I know most people don't understand the startup scene in Israel. It is truly unique. Definitely for the size of the place, Israel is smaller than New Jersey, and for the location. So can you just elaborate on what's going on in Israel with regards to high tech and startups?
Absolutely. So Israel is indeed a small country, not over around 10 million people. So yes, New Jersey is a great example here. But surprisingly, we have the, I think, second or third biggest tech scene globally. So I would say that Silicon Valley is number one, but we have, I think we are probably around the size of Boston and London, or something in that size. I think we are second or third in the number of tech companies that are registered in U.S. Stock Exchange that have basically flourished, from small companies up to the size that justifies an IPO. So it's a huge industry. I think it employs something around 12 or 13% of the entire Israeli workforce. This is huge in terms of such a small country. I would say that this is the locomotive that pulls the entire economy, Israeli economy. Obviously, there's lots of services that are related to tech, such as lawyers, accountants, the real estate, most of the commercial real estate that is not shopping malls or things like that. Lots of offices go to and high rises go to the tech industry. They are the best tenants. They're usually the richest companies that have more money than others. Also, I would say that the salaries in tech are, at least on average, at least double that the other salaries in Israel. So people strive to work in tech and get these jobs. We have most of the Magnificent Seven have presence on the ground. We have a huge actually NVIDIA center on the ground. We have Microsoft here for years. They have a few sites here, one in Tel Aviv, one in Haifa, and I think another one in Herzliya. We have Google on the ground for the last 20 years. We have an Apple R&D center. I
Correct
think we
me
have
if I'm wrong,
Amazon.
but correct me if I'm wrong, but Apple, this is the only site Apple has outside of Cupertino.
I believe so. It's based in Herzliya. It's been developing some of the most interesting products. It's very secretive. It's not a place that you can enter without being part of that place. And people basically strive to get a job there. It's they pay really well, and they give stock options to their employees. So technical people which come from Israel's main technical university based in Haifa, the Technion, they try to
the
get
Israeli MIT.
Yes, this is the Israeli MIT. Obviously, there are some others. There's one in Tel Aviv. There's one in Jerusalem. There's one in Beersheba, and maybe one or two more. But this is the MIT exactly. And also, the most of the developer for the Israeli, I would say, security and military industry, which is also tech, by the way, these days. I mean, military grade systems are also. It's more hardware than software, but it has a huge software component as well. And this industry runs parallel to the, I would say, civilian tech industry, and also it employs a significant number of engineers, software developers, hardware developers, aviation experts, and so forth. We have all seen these systems in action in the last year or so, when we had the conflict with Iran, and we were able to intercept some of or most of these missiles in midair. Some of them were coming from Yemen, and there's a few of these systems, and also in electro-optics is also huge. UAVs is huge. So these military security, cyber security, which is mostly civilian but has also military implications, is huge. So yes, I would say that these two verticals are the leading.
Okay. So so let's backtrack another one. What is the reason that Israel is such a huge tech hub? Again, comparing to its size, and punches way above its weight, comparing per capita, or comparing to other countries.
Absolutely. So I would say that the first factor that influences this is basically the need. So when we are such a tiny country threatened by external countries which are usually bigger, we need and have obviously a larger population. We need to get some kind of an advantage, and we are. Most of our options are to go to the technological advantage. So it comes from the root of this is basically the need, and us being in such a difficult neighborhood, I would say. But this is not enough. The other thing that contributes to this advantage is, as we said, these technical institutions. By the way, I forgot another one which is very important. It's the Weizmann Institute in Rehovot. I would say that this is as good as the Technion, the MIT. It does some research in other fields such as physics, chemistry, biology, and hard sciences. So I think this complements the Technion, and lots of scientists come from that place. By the way, we have a huge number of people coming from other countries, mainly Asian countries, East Asian countries, to study in both of these institutions. So we could spot a lot of Indian students and others coming from Southeast Asia, and basically studying in those establishments. So you have both the military need, and you have the academic institutions to support it. Together, I think this enables us to remain at a strong position technologically.
Okay, and how did you get started in the industry?
So my background is not in those security fields generally. Although I am a retired or a reserve officer. I'm a major in the IDF, but in reserves it's not a career job. It's just a reserves. But when I started, or I would say when I graduated from college and did my MBA, I was looking for some kind of a path to do things differently. And back then, most of the jobs that were offered were in the consumer goods or companies, conglomerates, or banks. And these were the early days of the internet. The year was 1999, some 25 years ago. And I was thinking that the internet, which was just at its starting years, would become huge one day. And I joined the company that was doing online gaming. Online gaming was one of the first pioneers to provide e-commerce or actual credit card payments. So this was the pioneers of the internet. I would say we had a few of these companies here back then. And 1 or 2 years later, we had the dot-com crash of 2000, 2001. And some of the companies disappeared, but it took 2 or 3 years. And then everyone realized that the internet was not just a promise, but it was actually going to change the world. And companies started to pop up. And this time, the business model was more realistic. So this vertical grew a lot, and we have, until this day, I didn't mention it before, but we have a pretty solid software industry here as well, both B2C and B2B. I was specializing to start with B2C, consumer-facing applications and software. But later, I also launched a company called After Download, which was later integrated, or there was an M&A by a larger company called ironSource, which was then, a few years after that, the bigger company that acquired us, IPO'd in the New York Stock Exchange. So I did the whole, I would say, path from an early stage garage-based early startup kid to having my company included in another company that was later IPO'd in New York.
Wow. When was that?
So I started the company. It was the year was this one was 2010. I would say 2010. We were acquired at 2013. Again, this was an ad tech, an ad network business. So we didn't have to go through a very deep tech research or costly R&D research. We had to invest a few $100,000, maybe $1 million into R&D, but maybe less. And we became a break even quite fast. I think it took us less than a year to get to break even, and we were profitable after a year. So after 3 years, I think back then our revenues were I think something around $30 million, something like that. And then a larger company saw this and they liked the way we operated the company. It was a company of around 50 employees. Very hand-picked people, and they say, yeah, we're gonna buy you. Some of the deal was in cash, some of the deal was in equity of the acquiring company, and then it took them a decade, but they IPO'd. I think it was 2022, I believe.
Amazing. And since 2022, you are working with the founders and startup.
Before, I would say that I was more active with advising startups even before. I was pretty well known here. Still am pretty well known here as one of the early angel investors in the industry. Although I'm not active in this full time anymore, but at one point I was a full time investor. I didn't mention, but I was also representing an American company which is well known, Techstars, which has accelerators worldwide. Basically US wide, all over the States. I think they have 20 or 30 locations in US, and then another 20 locations globally. I brought them to Israel. I established the Tel Aviv Accelerator back in 2000, I think it was 2015. I ran it for 2 years. It was a fintech-based accelerator and also enterprise software company. So I was engaging with hundreds of startup founders back then on a day-to-day basis, on a full-time job basis. And but these days I'm not doing it full-time anymore.
Okay, so with regards to advice to people who are just getting started inside whatever the high tech or as founders themselves, what are the top advices you can give people, someone with your experience? What would you want to know when you started that you learned during the way that can help others?
So two things I would say, or maybe three. The first thing is it's very important to choose the right co-founder or your partner. Sometimes it's only one, sometimes it's two. I would say that the ideal team is either 2 co-founders or 3 co-founders. A sole co-founder is less favorable, and more than 3 is usually more difficult to manage. So 2 or 3. Basically, you are kind of getting married to these people for a decade. So usually it takes, I would say, it could take 7 to 10 years from a pre-seed stage or an ideation stage of a company to a full-blown acquisition or an IPO. So think 10 years. And you're going to spend 10 years with these people who are your partners now. And you're going to spend more time with them than with your significant other or with your wife. So it's very important to choose these people. So usually I would recommend, although I've seen cases that it has worked, but don't take, if you can, a partner that you've just met in some kind of a meetup. But it's better to venture with someone that you've been knowing for a few years. It doesn't have to be your best personal friend, but it has to be someone that you can work with together for many years, that you guys complement each other. So it's good that you don't have to be overlapping, but each one of you has to have its own strengths. So I would say the team is the most important. I think, generally speaking, when investors are examining new startups, then the product and the field and the market size matter, of course, but the team is the most important thing. So everyone is being looking at the team, the credentials. People want to see that you've either, in Israel, you went to a good unit, because everyone does mandatory service. So if you've been to a good unit, it could be an elite combat unit, or maybe you've been a pilot in a technological unit, yes, like an intelligence unit, or a place where you do deep tech R&D, or even if you're a field commander and you've led 100 soldiers into combat, that counts a lot, because it means that you could probably lead people as in a civilian company under you've got experience of leading people under fire. So that's a lot of experience, real world experience. So people looking for these leaders, maybe the best combination is one that is some kind of a field commander plus a technological wizard. This is a good combination. I've seen quite a few incidents that these VCs, if the team has the right background, like these VCs would chase more than one VC. Many VCs would chase that team and offer them a better deal than their competitors, rather than the founders chasing the money. So great teams are difficult to come by. Access to the best teams is difficult, because all of the VCs know, based on past data, which type of founders usually perform well. So So I would say that the team counts most. Other than that, I would say that it has to be. Everyone talks about product market fit. I think there is also a founder market fit. So the right founders need to launch a startup or a company in a field of their expertise. I think that's also a prerequisite. If you have previous experience in some kind of, let's say, cybersecurity systems, you better launch your company in that field and build it on your previous experience rather than launching something else. It's more difficult for founders to, people who don't have this kind of backgrounds altogether. They were doing something totally else, and all of a sudden they try to launch some app for, let's say, tracking sports or a gym app. Usually these type of founders, I'm obviously generalizing here, and anything has potential, but these kind of companies find it, these kind of founders who are going for something that is more, I would say, simple, and would find it way more difficult to raise money for their project.
All right. Do you think that people who, I don't know, made an exit or made some money in one field, so basically what you're saying, that people who have been in one field, they should concentrate in that specific area and shouldn't go like horizontal and stay in that vertical? Because I see it a lot. People who are, they created a business, and I talk about this a lot with people that I work with, people who made some money, I don't know, in the gas industry, and suddenly they're starting a chain of restaurants, and they think that they're like an amazing founder, and they have been an amazing founder in their field, but then they moved into another field and they basically fall flat on their face.
Yeah. So obviously, by the way, being a second-time founder or serial entrepreneur is something that helps you. So if you can show some credential that you've already had a previous win, a previous startup that has exploded and went really well, when you come second time around, when you come to these VCs or these investors and try to raise money, they would say, okay, it's either we or some of our friends made money with this guy, so it gives you a head start compared to people who don't have this. But again, if you try to verge into something totally different, as you said here, then this previous experience counts less. So it doesn't necessarily have to be that you launch the company in exactly the same field, but you have to be able to demonstrate that you are going to use your previous experience, perhaps your previous Rolodex of connections from the previous startup. When people succeed with a company, they usually develop, because Israel is such a small country, most of the sales, I didn't say that, most of the sales, most of the revenues of these companies come from external sources, from exports. So I think it's at least the sales or the revenues are usually at least 50%, if not more, US-based revenues, and maybe the rest it can be from Europe, maybe some of it can be from Asia Pacific, but I would say most of these companies target the US as their main market, and when someone has already done this before, maybe they have relocated to the US for a couple of years, established some contacts. That's better than starting from scratch all over again in another industry.
Got it. Yeah, it makes sense. And as a venture capital investor yourself, or you used to be an angel investor. What do you look for when you invest in a company? What's the things that everyone has his own list of things. What are the things that you look for when you invest in a company?
So as I said, I these days I don't actively look for companies, but I still get pitched by founders, and more so by co-investors. So people that I've worked before, with. Usually, when I see a good, because I've been in this space for at least 20 years, I know who the good investors are, and some of them are more active than me these days. So if I get pitched or if I get an offer to join a financing round of a company by a coalition of great investors who've done well in the past, I will consider it. It's much easier to join a financing round that's been vetted by 5 investors that I have a higher regard to than doing research on my own, spending the time on meeting the founders at least 2 or 3 meetings, and then researching a field which I'm not exactly an expert with, and trying to come with an outcome. This is not my day job anymore. So these days, when a friend offers me, look, I've met these great people, I'm going to invest $100,000, just as an example, and another 2 well-known investors are doing the same. It's easier to join such a venture than doing all of the work from scratch. The same goes for being an investor in VCs, as a limited partner in VCs. I've done this a few times. Some of these VCs usually have way better access, especially to late stage deals that angel investors cannot access. And obviously, the later the stage of the company, the later the company is in the value chain and the process, the less risky it is. So if a company is already at a round B, and it's already raised $100 million, there's always a chance that things will not work out and the company will go bust. But once it's past that stage, the probability that the company will succeed is way higher than a seed stage. Yes, it's more expensive to enter, but the risk is way lower.
You mitigate the risk. It's a lower risk.
You mitigate the risk, and when you join a VC, what they usually do, they take your money and they split it, let's say, between 15 to 20 different companies. So if 5 go bust, 5 do really well, and the rest are sometimes in the middle, what usually happens is that those that do really well cover more than the losses than those who went bust, and because there's an asymmetric outcome. With startups, you can do 50x on your money or 100x on your money when you choose the right. The latest example is a company called Wiz. This is the biggest exit out of Israel, I think, since the start of this tech industry in the last 20 years. So I think Google purchased it for $32 billion. Billions, yes. I think that the second one was 15 billion, I think. So 32 billion is the record now. And people who did invest, and I have just as an example, but I actually have an investment in like a really small piece through a VC that invested into this company. The outcome is huge, and it way more than covers the investments that didn't go well. So you mitigate the risk when you split your money across 15 or 20 companies.
Yeah, diversify.
Exactly.
All right, and then recently recently for the last 2 years, you launched the Owl podcast, and also have a book out. So let's start with the book.
Right.
The book is in Hebrew, right?
The book is in Hebrew. Yes. So our English speaking audience here.
You need to learn Hebrew.
Well, or you can buy it online. It's available, and then translate it with ChatGPT or some similar Gemini. But yeah, so I launched this. I wrote this book and published it to help the next generation of Israeli entrepreneurship. I think this is extremely this legacy and having more of these startup founders every year is a huge advantage to our economy. This is how Israel grew from a country that was basically exporting oranges when I was a kid to a country that has the second number of tech companies in New York Stock Exchange. So
if you think about it, Israel is the original startup.
Israel itself is a startup. I mean, look, this country was was an idea in Theodor Herzl's mind some 120 years ago. People were laughing at him, and he's a startup founder. Look, he pitched the idea to Jews in a few of these Zionist congresses back in the 19th century. He met with these people. He raised money, by the way, from wealthy individuals to launch these events. I think they launched some sort of a bank to fund the acquisition of lands in what was then the country was ruled by the Ottomans, by the Turks. So they came here. By the way, my family came here at 1860 or 1870. When the Turks were in charge, the Ottoman Empire,
Where did they go to in Israel?
I think they went to Jerusalem.
Okay.
They were by then. I'm a fifth or sixth generation here, so they went to Jerusalem. They were some sort of the equivalent of the ultra-Orthodox of today. I mean, they look the same. I have these photos here. I don't know how strict they were religious. Probably they were.
Yes.
Because they look like Orthodox in those old photos, and the country, as you said, the country itself is a startup. He wrote a book. Herzl wrote a book about the Holy Land becoming the country of the Jews or something like that. And yes, it took 50 years after he died, and this dream came true. I mean, we went through 2 world wars, including going through the Jewish people went through the Holocaust in the Second World War. And 2 or 3 years after the end of World War II, the country was established against all odds. The UN approved it in this historic resolution, and then starting from that, the country has now become quite advanced. I think we've surpassed most of, not the US, but most of the European countries, even the advanced ones, in terms of GDP per capita. So we are looking, I think we are in the top 15 in terms of GDP per capita these days.
Yes.
So, and it's growing. And of course, the last 2 years, as we all know, were quite difficult with the October 7 massacres attack. And we've went through a rough time. I probably would say that my forefathers went through even more difficult times at previous wars in 1948. But still, I mean, we're not used to this. This was a full-scale war. The first time there is a full-scale war in my lifetime. We've had terrorist events before. I want to say that we're used to it. I mean, look, these days it's happening all over the world. It happened in Sydney, Australia, a couple of days ago, and I mean, we've had the Charlie Kirk assassination less than a few months ago. So terrorist events happen, unfortunately, globally, but a full-scale war with Iran and Hezbollah, this a really full-scale war. This was the first time in my lifetime.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say it was easy, but the country and the people pulled together their resources, and I think we are at the end. I'm not sure if it's the. I mean, this thing is entirely over. Maybe there is some kind of remaining. I don't know yet. No one knows.
It depends who you ask. Depending on,
I would say it depends on the meetings that Prime Minister Netanyahu will have with President Trump, and what they will decide together, exactly how they want to see this region in terms of normalization with the moderate Arab countries such as Saudi Arabia. We already have very good relationships with the UAE, with United Arab Emirates and Bahrain. We have some relations. I mean, look, we have diplomatic relationships with Egypt and Jordan, although they are not as advanced as UAE and the Saudis. But again, if I think Israel, it's the way I look at it. And by the way, real estate is really expensive here, and because we have this GDP that's been growing, and we are expecting, I think the World Bank and the OECD are expecting an economic growth of around 4.9% next year, 2026. So we are coming out of this war, and well, stronger and also maybe wiser. We didn't realize because we've had 20 years of relative quiet. It wasn't totally quiet, but relatively quiet. We didn't realize what the risks are in this area, and it all happened in one day, and we were forced to mobilize the entire country. The first 3 months were really more difficult, but I think we came out of the tunnel on the other side, and we are okay now. So I think it is a good time to invest in Israel and Israeli tech. I think 2025. We don't have the final figures yet, but it looks like it's going to rival the top years, which were just the post-COVID years, 2021, 2022, were the top years before the October 7 massacres, were the top years in tech. And I think 2025 is getting closer to these numbers, and probably 2026 will top them. So I think this is a great time to look into investment in Israel. By the way, if people that are listening to us now, most, if not all, of the commercial flights to Tel Aviv has been resumed. It's not just El Al that flies here. I think it's United and Delta Airlines and maybe American Airlines, or most of the commercial companies are now flying to Tel Aviv, not just from New York, but from Chicago as well, and from Miami, and from the West Coast. So it's pretty well connected to the US. I've seen more and more tourists and business tourists in the last couple of months since this ceasefire was publicly announced by President Trump, coming to industry and business events, and I think we are on the right track now. And hopefully we'll also see some kind of progress with normalization with Saudi Arabia, which can lead to a normalization with many other countries as well.
Which will be amazing.
Which will be amazing, of course. I mean, we're looking for that. Most of these Muslim countries are not even close to here. I mean, I'm speaking about Indonesia, Malaysia. These countries are, 5,000, 6,000 miles from here. They've nothing to do with the conflict. They're waiting for this stamp of approval of the Saudis that Israel is okay, and they will join, and it will be great.
All right. Yeah, it's amazing. Okay, so then you wrote the book, and then the book was before the podcast, or how did it go?
The book was before the podcast. So the podcast was basically the outcome, or my personal response to the October 7th unfortunate events. When I'm, as I said, I'm retired from reserves, and I was looking to do something for the community, and I was thinking that first that journalism and the media is somehow doesn't report what's actually happening for various reasons. I'm not going to go into politics here, but the media has deteriorated. As an officer, I was used to relying on multiple sources, and I was reading these publications. I didn't know exactly what was happening on the ground. So I said, okay, I'm going to launch a podcast, and I'm going to invite the most interesting and knowledgeable people to my podcast, and learn from the people who know what exactly is happening. So I've had top military and security personnel here. They were not exposing secrets, but they could describe what's actually happening and the processes and their expectations of outcomes of certain events. The same with the politicians. I've had a few ministers, government ministers, and members of parliament or congressmen on the podcast. So I could evaluate better the political situation. I actually met with these people, so I could do a little of a small talk over a cup of coffee before we started recording. The same with business people, chief economists of banks and financial institutions, to make sure that I understand the financial situation during those difficult years, so I don't rely totally on what they say on the news. The news, maybe it's similar in the US. Some of these media channels are financed by I don't know who, but they don't report what's actually going on. They report according to some kind of an agenda. I think this is a global.
Because of the financials.
Yes, and media has a bias. It has a business bias. It has a political bias, and some of these, especially in the security and those security correspondents and military correspondents, they got it all wrong. Look, I mean, before October 7, nobody was even thinking that something like that was possible. Not the military establishment and not all of these correspondents. Everyone was saying, no, look, the situation is under control. Hamas will never invade us. And they were all wrong. By the way, some of these people who were totally wrong are still employed both by the military establishment and by the media. And they keep reporting on a day-to-day basis this nonsense. So I said, look, I cannot trust these sources. I better have my own sources to establish a better outlook, so I can manage my own investments better. Look, if things are going well, I would better know, and I can change my behavior. If things are not going well, I will make different decisions, but I'm not going to rely on the media.
I got it.
So this podcast, I mean, I've been doing it for 2 years, and I'm not a professional journalist, but the outcome was great. I mean, I've positioned the Owl as one of the leading podcasts in Israel. Again, it's mostly in Hebrew. These days, YouTube offers a dubbing feature. So some of these conversations, you could turn it on and listen in English. It's not perfect yet, but I guess YouTube are working on making the dubbing perfect. But there's some 75 episodes with all sorts of experts on Israeli society, politics, judiciary, politicians, business people, military experts. So really the top brass of the country, where most of them were here. It's been worthwhile of doing that. I'm still doing it. I think I'm getting smarter by learning from these people. And obviously the audience has identified that I bring these top people to my podcast, so they follow me.
I think I looked, and until now you have 1.5 million views on YouTube.
1.5 million views. I have an episode that has went to 130,000 views. Look, this country, as I said, this country
Israel is huge.
Yes, this country is one state. I mean, this country, Hebrew, we have, I think, 8 million Hebrew speakers. So it's huge for this kind of market size, and people have identified it. And these days, when I invite someone to the podcast, they usually want this kind of exposure. Because they know that a lot of people, especially politicians, we're entering an election year in 2026. So some of these politicians will be here, I guess.
Yeah. So what was the thing that you learned that kind of blew your mind? Like, what was the unconventional wisdom that you learned from doing this? Because, as you said, when we came into the 7th of October, we were sold on a specific narrative that Even there were politicians who said that Hamas is an ally and that there's nothing going to happen from Gaza. And even though reports came out that they're training, everyone said, no, they're just doing their thing. Don't bother them. We were funding them through, Qatar was funding them through different channels. Um, everyone was in shock. What was, when you interview people that are, I saw the people that you interview, some of them are high ranking officers, not just how do you call it, headquarter officers, but people who have boots on the ground. They've been on the ground. They fought in those areas. What was the main thing that you learned that for you is kind of
so I guess one of the reasons that I did this podcast is to as I said, to know what's actually going on, because the media bias, and I became way more optimistic and pro Israel, or I would say business-wise long Israel, way before this was considered mainstream. I was interviewing these people. I was looking at them at the eye, on a personal. Drinking. We had coffee together, and I would say, okay, these people are in charge, or some of them are in charge. They maybe they can bullshit or in the media, but they cannot bullshit me in my own place that easily. I've been around for some time, so I became quite optimistic that things, although not easy, and we had the huge problem of the hostages for almost 2 years. They were the last of them were released a few weeks ago, and we still have one which is deceased, but he's still in Gaza. This was a huge complication. If there weren't the hostages, this war would be over a long time ago. But on the ground, I learned that things are better than what they appear on the media, and more importantly, on the financial and business angle, I saw that the country is way more resilient than what I expected it before, and even before the October 7th events. Look, the stock exchange, the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange, I think is the best performer since the start of this year, since 2025. I think it rose by 50%. This is on Israeli shekel terms. The shekel itself strengthened against the dollar I think in 12% since the start of this year. So the exchange rate is more in favor of the shekel now than it was on January 1st by 12% or even 15% now. So I saw that and also the Israel central bank reserves have not fallen through the war. They were somehow able to hold on to their US dollar reserve. Obviously, we received military help from the US, obviously in equipment and supplies, yes, but financially, the situation was more stable than even what those credit rating agencies were giving us. By the way, they changed the rating and they increased it now once again. They dropped it when the war started. They reinstated some of it now. So I was on the ground, and I was witnessing these events and saying, okay, the situation, well, it's a war, and people are getting killed.
War is always horrible.
The war is horrible, and people, are getting killed and wounded, and we're going to face a huge psychological issue with people who have been wounded in this war. But on a broader level, on a national level, the country is way more resilient than what it appears. Look, people financially, and you can see it when you are maybe it's not everyone, but when you are going through the streets of Tel Aviv, the restaurants are full. There's people have bought new cars. It's not that the resources have been depleted. And now when we are seeing that 2025 has had more of these tech exits, and there's more to come in 2026. Some of these deals were already public announced, but the completion and the closure will only happen in a few months' time in 2026. So the funds that people are the payouts will only be next year, and this also helps the government with widening its tax base. And these exits help with the budget and cover some of the budget deficit that has been growing because of the security expenditures of the war. So financially speaking, the situation is way better than what was happening, let's say, a few decades ago when we had a war. The country would go into a recession that could last 5, 6, even 10 years. But this didn't happen this time because we were not militarily prepared for their invasion, but we were definitely financially prepared for their invasion. And I think this was quite helpful for ensuring that the outcome of this is. I don't say that it's a total victory yet, but it's definitely some sort of a victory because we are now looking to the negotiations that Netanyahu and Trump, in order to actually reach a complete ceasefire, are on terms that are quite favorable to Israel.
Yes, and interestingly enough, the more that these anti-Semitism attacks across the world continue and will probably increase, more and more Jews come to Israel. More and more Jews who are financially well off are coming into Israel, buying real estate, and also the world is starting consuming Israeli tech. One of the companies that I work with or help, it's a defense company that is doing personnel vetting. Is they're being the need is arising. The fact that these things happen, you definitely want to know if someone is trying to get into your country. If a week before he has liked an Al Qaeda Facebook page or an ISIS Facebook page, and you don't just let them in. Started with the Trump administration closing the southern border, but now the fact that what happened unfortunately in Bondi Beach in Australia definitely brings up a new need. And then we also had last week the first Arrow 3 unit deployed in Germany.
Correct. So basically, what Trump has Trump's directive, or basically the U.S. strategy in terms of Europe, they were asking, or more than asking, I would say, Europe to spend more on their defense vis-a-vis Russia, and not rely so much on the U.S. Defending them in times of danger. And I think that the first country to realize that they have to do so are those who are the closest to the Russian border. So Poland was the first to increase their spending on military, and I think they even have relaunched a mandatory national service. Germany is now, as you said, they have bought the Israeli missile interception systems, Arrow 3, to deploy them in Germany, and the Chancellor of Germany was here last week. I think he was here on also to negotiate purchasing the Arrow 4, which is still in R&D. These Arrow systems are a joint venture between Israel and the US. Germany obviously is part of the Western Bloc, so they are allowed to buy it, but they have to pay for it. And the German Chancellor flew here to discuss this. I think this is one of the main agendas of his visit. So Israel is selling these systems and as you said, the border control, anti-terror systems, UAVs to Europe, mainly to Europe. I mean, I think Finland has bought. There were deals with Finland. There were deals with Greece. Some other countries. Same with East Asia. Some of the usually East Asian Pacific nations don't like their names to be publicly known, but the relevant countries, I mean, everyone knows who these countries are. I can say it here. It's not a big secret. It's either Korea, Singapore, maybe Taiwan, and maybe I forgot one of them, or Thailand. But these are the main countries that are, or Philippines, also part of the Western bloc. So these countries are also buying. We have good relations with Central Asia, emerging economies such as Azerbaijan and Georgia or Georgia, Uzbekistan. Some of these countries are now also becoming clients of defense. These defense.
And Azerbaijan is a Muslim country.
Azerbaijan is not just a Muslim country; it's even a Shia country. So it's very.
Exactly.
It has a border with Iran.
With Iran.
It has a border with Iran, but in contrast with Iran, it's not a religious dictatorship. It's a free country. I haven't been to Baku yet, but I can tell you that it has become a major tourist destination for Israelis in the last year or so. When some of these Western capitals in Europe have been with enabling these pro-Palestine marches in London or Dublin or Madrid, Paris. Israeli tourism is huge here, and Israelis love to travel. And they say, okay, if these countries are not our friends anymore, or they are supporting the Palestinians, by the way, for mere internal political pressures, I'm not going to go into that, but we need to find friendly countries that are more friendly to us, especially taking into account that these political measures, also increase anti-Semitism, who then cause people like these two terrorists in Sydney taking their privately owned guns and shooting at a Hanukkah random people at a Hanukkah event. I'm not blaming the Australian government directly, but again, if these marches are allowed with and there's no limitation, then you have always the one extremist that will take their personal guns and shoot at people. So we have other countries that are not behaving this way, and they are becoming our new friends. Many of them are in Eastern Europe, the old Eastern Europe countries such as Hungary, Poland, Czech Republic, Slovak Republic, Romania, Bulgaria, Greece, Cyprus.
I have family members who are traveling through Poland right now, and 80 years ago, Jews fled Poland.
Right. So yes. So everyone knows that 80 years ago, again, Jews were slaughtered in Poland by the Nazis, obviously, who established those concentration camps on Polish lands. And these days,
now it's totally safe.
Poland is probably one of the most safe countries in Europe for everyone, not just for Israelis, for everyone. There's no tolerance whatsoever for any Islamists or terrorism in whatever form. And I think, I'm not going to go into European politics here, but they got it right, I think, and they prevented some of these problems that Western Europe is facing now.
Exactly. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. And by the way, the daughter of the Azerbaijanian, he's a president, I think, or a king or whatever he is has a rabbi who's her.
The daughter has married the rabbi.
The daughter of the Azerbaijanian whatever.
Yeah, so what I've heard of Azerbaijan,
very pro-Judaism,
people are Israelis are very welcome in Azerbaijan. There is no compulsory head covers, hijab like in Iran. It is a Muslim country. It is a Shia country, but by the way, alcohol is allowed. And basically, it's a Muslim country who has Western, some kind of Western values, and Israelis are extremely welcome, and Azeris are very, very friendly. So this is, by the way, an example that it's not
it can be
necessarily done. It's not necessarily the Islam that's the problem. It's some sort of type of Islam where the extremists, like the Muslim Brotherhood, who take the Quran and use it in a certain way for their political wrong ideas.
Cherry picking verses from the Islam.
Exactly.
Hadith
Exactly.
139 and
Exactly.
other verses. Well, all right. So we are already running an hour and something. It's been intriguing. It's been intriguing. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Uri, for inviting. I'm happy to talk about what's happening on the ground. I know we have a great following audience in the US that wants to know what's actually happening on the ground.
Exactly.
And as I said, the media doesn't always report.
No.
So podcasts in general are one of the best sources to you can listen to actual people who are not in the TV channels and get your information.
Yeah, and I told you when we spoke in Hebrew that everyone that I speak with in the US, everyone is so much, especially in Florida and Texas, everyone is just so, everyone say we love Israel. Listen, guys, everyone has been to Israel or planning to come to Israel. Everyone heard something good about Israel. Everyone, especially devout Christians, they thank us for protecting their sacred sites. It's interesting to see that when you're here, to see how much attention they have on Israel staying what it is and even becoming better.
So I'd like to thank our friends in the US for supporting us and through these difficult times, and we are out of the darkness, I hope, towards a way better new year. We're entering a new year. We have Christmas in 10 days and the new year in 2 weeks. So come to Israel. 2026, Israel is back. Don't hesitate, come to Israel, see it for yourself.
And the food is the best on the planet.
Absolutely.
By far. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Uri. Happy to be here.
Until next time.
Thank you.
Yes.
Absolutely.